have the pleasure of welcoming Mia onto Uncover Wealth Radio today. Mia has co-owned and operated seven-figure businesses, is an international speaker, a best-selling author, and a world-class business coach. She helps purpose-driven entrepreneurs who know they're meant for more stop secretly struggling by demolishing their fears and insecurities to become a force to be reckoned with, thereby creating wealth easier and faster. Mia, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. We're going to have fun.
I think so too. So I think all of us can probably relate to the secretly struggling with kind of fears and insecurities and those kinds of things. I think that it's just incredibly common. So how do we get rid of that? How do we stop that?
Yes. How do we stop that? You know, it's the first thing that I would love to share is actually how it started.
Great.
Right?
Yeah.
Because I think if we see how it all began at the source, it's easier to understand how we're going to stop it.
Agreed.
But when I was about 5 years old, you know, I remember playing in my room. I heard my father calling me, and of all the people in my household, my father was the person who scared me the most, because one moment he could be super funny and gregarious, and then the next moment it was like something could set him off. And I always felt like I was walking around on eggshells,
Yeah.
you know? And so I remember him saying to me, you know, like, I want us to go outside. And I remember thinking, well, why? Like, and why me? Because, you know, of all the people he wanted to spend time with, my older sister was kind of his favorite. She was like the boy he never had. So I couldn't understand it, but he was like, I just want us to spend time together. And I thought, oh, wow. Dad wants to spend time with me. Like, I remember feeling like special or happy or excited about that. And then when we went outside, I remember him saying to me, like, which one is your favorite chicken? And I was like, well, that one. Like, there was always the one, you know, I grew up on a farm, that the one that always followed me around.
Yeah.
And I never saw it coming this day, but that day he was like, great, well, then that's the one we're going to kill today. And I say that because my mind went into like, wait, what? Like, I went into confusion, like my brain like froze. I shut down. I could not make any sense of what was happening. All these thoughts were running super fast. I remember someone screaming and realized, oh, wow, that's me. Like, I'm screaming. And then feeling like, oh my gosh, this is all my fault. Like, this is my fault. I felt completely frozen. My mind goes blank. And that day, my life changed forever. Because that day, I realized that people don't really mean what they say. You can't really trust anyone, not even your own father. And that I made a decision that the world was not a safe space. Like, it was just not a safe place. So I vowed at 5 years old that I would never let that happen to me again. And I built these walls around myself, and I didn't let anyone in for years or even decades. Now, I never knew back then that the walls that I had built to protect myself would become my limitations or my glass ceilings for myself and my business.
Yes.
So I like to say where it all started, because the truth is that every single person has experienced some form of trauma. It doesn't have to be like my trauma. It can be, I helped a gentleman recently who he was constantly making money and losing money, and he could never keep his wealth. Like, he could never make money, right? As an entrepreneur, he couldn't make it consistently. And he had thought he didn't have a trauma. But when I took him back, just to show him where it was, what we found was when he was 4 years old, he had gone to preschool, come home, and was super excited, and remembers running in and said to his dad, Dad, look, I colored inside the lines. And his dad looked at the piece of paper and he said, oh, I guess you don't have much of an imagination. Now, that's all he said. So it doesn't have to be a chicken.
Yeah.
It could be that like you think like 1 minute you're happy and you think like, oh my gosh, this is going to be the most amazing experience of my life. And then it didn't go that way. It didn't go that way. So it kind of, to answer your question, like how, like, because we have to understand how it got created and how we, every single person created it. To answer that, it's like this. This is what I found, is like every human being is born whole, perfect, and complete, right? There's not one baby born with a self-esteem issue.
Yes.
Right? So then where did that happen? Where did that get started? What happened is I see the most amount of traumas around 2 years old, like
Wow.
between 2 to 3 to 4, like 5 can happen inside of that, like mine, but most are around 2 to 3.
Wow.
3 years old. And so what happens is that you feel this whole perfect and complete harmony within yourself. You trust yourself, others in the world. And then you go into an experience where before in your life, everything always was fun. Like you don't have a memory of something going wrong or being blindsided. But that day, that experience, something happened that blindsided you, shocked you, confused you, caused you in some form of another to like what, like doubt yourself. Because as a child grows, we grow by an emotional bond of trust.
Yes.
Well, when that bond is broken, we experience an emotional trauma. What happened that day is that's the day we created our ego. So you know how nobody, like, it's like people are like, oh, this ego. Where the hell's ego? Like, I don't even, like, I didn't even think I had an ego back years and years, a long time ago, because I didn't understand. I thought ego was, oh, that's just for people who are
bravado.
Like,
People think ego is bravado, don't they?
Yes. So in my mind, I was like, oh, that's not me. But I didn't realize that the ego it has two sides. It can be the superiority ego, that bravado, or it can be the inferiority ego, which is the hiding and avoiding and the not wanting to be seen, like the opposite direction, right? So in that day, we created our ego. And then from that day forward, every negative experience that we've been having is the same pattern over and over and over again. It just usually gets bigger.
Gosh.
Until we actually heal it. That's why as a business coach, people are like, you heal trauma. Yes, because if we don't heal this trauma, we will continue to sabotage and in life and business, because business is really a relationship game.
Oh, yes.
Right? It doesn't matter what business you're in. You may say you're an attorney, you may say you're a real estate agent, but ultimately we're all in the relationship game.
Yeah.
And that's why it's going to keep sabotaging on you, because these walls that you built a long time ago in order to protect yourself is what's causing everything to not happen in your business. So when we heal it, we can then create from wholeness, which is kind of like going back home.
Yes.
Right. And the reason why people can't find it, like I spent like $500,000 in my own coaching, looking for the best and the best to help me figure out, what is this? Why do I keep sabotaging? Why is this so hard? And the reason they can't figure it out, and I went to years of therapy and they couldn't figure it out, is that they keep looking for it in the mind. And the mind, that negative voice that we hear, it doesn't run anymore.
Yes.
I don't have a negative voice anymore. But that negative voice was actually just a symptom of this underlying root cause. So this is what happens. This is what happens in a nutshell, which I wish somebody would have explained to me. I'm 53, so I wish somebody would have told me this a long time ago when I was young, like you. Like you. So
I'm not that much younger than you.
Oh, good. You look amazing, then. That's a compliment.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
So what happens to us all is then, as like we get stuck or trapped between the emotional side of ourselves and our logical mind.
Yeah.
So we know what to do, but we just can't seem to emotionally do it. We circle and trap between these two parts of ourselves over and over and over again. And it feels like this to most people, because I get a lot of the inferiority ego people. The superiority egos, they just force their way through it.
Yeah,
it's
sure.
It's not that they don't have the trauma. People misunderstand. They have a trauma. They're just really good at the act.
Got you. Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? And no judgment. I'm not saying one's right, one's wrong. I'm just saying they're just really good at it, the act of it. So what happens is we end up feeling, though, is like, this is how I used to feel all the time. I would feel like, see me, but don't see me. Because like, see me, I want to be known, I want to do good, I want to serve, I want to make an impact on people's lives, but don't really see me, because if you really see me, you're going to see what's really wrong with me.
Yes.
That's the reason why people are afraid to be seen on camera.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? It's completely fascinating. I can completely relate to so much of what you're saying, both myself and I see it with clients as well. I mean, it's just incredible.
Yes.
So in order to heal the trauma, then presumably we need to identify when it happened and what it is before we can heal it.
Yes. And what we need is the original one. And the reason I'm saying that is because I get a lot of people who've done years of therapy, and believe it or not, they have the wrong trauma.
Yes.
Let me give you an example. I helped a woman who's an awesome attorney, and she was struggling tremendously. And she thought her trauma was because when she was a teenager, she was actually kidnapped in Colombia. She was from Colombia. She was kidnapped. Now, you would think
that sounds pretty traumatic.
You would think that is her trauma, right?
Yeah.
Like anybody would think like, oh my gosh, if I'm looking at this from a logical point of view, oh, it's got to be the kidnapping. Actually, her trauma it's not the kidnapping. Her trauma, remember how I tell you it gets bigger, right? If you don't heal it, it starts to get bigger. So her original trauma, the one here, was actually when she was about 3 years old. She remembers being really, really scared and going into her parents' room and being reprimanded to go back to her bed and not. And she made it mean that people aren't going to be there for you. That like people can, like, the people you think you can trust are not the people you can trust.
Yes.
Like, can you see like how these decisions can literally, I'm not saying she's consciously creating kidnapping.
No, of course.
But can you see that how those patterns of feeling like people are going to hurt you, they're going to not trust you, you can't trust people, and
you're in a cycle then.
Can you see it cycle? That's what I'm trying to point at. I'm not at all saying so we literally had to heal what happened to her at that young age, and then we can start to free the other one. We freed it up really quick because that was just another version of the deeper one. Once we can do that, she stopped struggling internally about being seen and trusting people. And so I think, like inside of my own work, what we do is, as a business coach, we heal the trauma and then we help them free the mind from the negative self-talk so that you stop running the programming. And then what we do is we show you how to process your emotions, right? Because the very reason you have a trauma from the original one is because we didn't have parents or a model who knew how to process their own emotions.
Yes.
Right? I know that's not the family I was raised in.
Me neither.
Right? Yeah, it's fascinating because my dad would be the aggressor, and he would be the one. And I don't have any judgment on my dad anymore. Actually, I've completed all of this, but the interesting thing is he was actually trying to make me tough because I became really shy, which shy is a fear of judgment. He thought he could toughen me up in order to be better equipped for the world. My mom, on the other hand, was the kind of mom who, she didn't know how to express her own emotions. So when she got angry with you, she just stopped talking to you.
Yes.
So there would be, as a child, I remember as a teenager, I remember my mom being upset with me, and she stopped talking with me because I was working. I was working since I was 13 years old, but I wasn't getting the grades because I was working at 13.
Yeah.
And she got upset with me because I wasn't getting A's, and she ended up not talking to me for an entire semester until I brought that up.
Wow.
So even
That's a long time.
that's a long time, right? Even like that withholding of feeling like no one will talk to you, like that kind of feeling like you're on your own. It could be something simple like this that can cause such a traumatic experience. But again, it all starts really young.
Yeah.
Those aren't new patterns. That she did that since we were little,
Yeah.
right? So
yeah, of course.
yeah, does that make sense?
It absolutely does. But it also makes me worry what I've already done to my own children at the same time.
Yes. I totally get it. The best thing that we could ever do is help them process their emotions. So, and I always say this to all of my own clients. I'm like, you're not going to stop a trauma. Here's why, though. I'm gonna show you why. You could be the perfect parent. I'm wanting to show you why. Regardless of you doing it's not about doing everything right, because let me show you why. The reason is inside of the world we live in, where there is the law of polarity. So the law of polarity says, the universal law of polarity says that inside of this universe, everything exists in an equal and an opposite whole. Meaning, if there's an up, there's a down, right? If there's the in, there's an out. So for a problem to exist, the equal and opposite solution must equally exist at the same moment in time, not a different moment.
Sure.
Okay? So for lack to exist, abundance must equally exist, right? The thing of it is these are happening simultaneously.
Yes.
We compartmentalize them to think that they're happening only one at a time. Both exist in the same moment. Why I say that you can't prevent a trauma. You could do everything just right, but they go to school and somebody says something, a teacher, a child, somebody says something, and it doesn't go the way they thought. Because contrast, I'm just showing you it as a contrast. Instead of thinking as problems, one of the best things that we could ever do for ourselves and our kids is to help them understand that there's nothing wrong with a problem, because a problem equally contains a solution.
Yeah.
The key is not having problems mean that there is mean a statement or a fixed, or like that the problem is like solid and not movable, right? Every problem has a solution, an equal and opposite solution. So it's just a matter of freeing ourselves from, like, it's not that the trauma happened or like that upset happened, but now how do we process our emotions about it? So you want to ask your children, well, here's the first thing that I would do. I would first acknowledge. Number one, acknowledge. If I could tell you the number one skill that every entrepreneur should learn, is to acknowledge, because acknowledgement does not equal agreement.
Yes.
Which is a misunderstanding. The fear is, if I acknowledge you for what you're experiencing, and I think I'm disagreeing with it, that somehow I'm saying that I agree with that, but it doesn't. Acknowledgement just is really acknowledging that that's the experience the person is having. Right.
And this goes for all our relationships too, doesn't it? It's kind of clients, customers, vendors, team members, all of it.
Everything. The very first thing that I always do as a skill is just acknowledge.
Yeah.
When I mean acknowledge is, I just really mean like whatever the words they use, because words have different meanings. So the key in acknowledgement is not to change the meaning. If your child, or if your coworker or your teammate, or your employee says X, you don't want to change X to Y.
Yeah.
You want to use the words they used and just acknowledge back, wow, I really get that, what you're saying is X, tell me more. What else would you like me to hear about that? So once they can get it out, which is what the child or even an adult, because all we are adults that are wounded children, right? So all we need to do is get that out. Once the person gets to feel expressed, right? We're not making them wrong. We're just allowing them to express it, and we're acknowledging it.
Yeah.
Once that happens, what's happening in that moment is the ego, because what comes out, because we feel like something's wrong, the ego gets triggered. Well, when we acknowledge, it immediately deflates the ego. This is the most powerful tool. If you want to deflate any situation, what would literally stop wars from happening is acknowledgement.
Wow.
Like, it's so powerful of a skill. So you just acknowledge, right? So if the child experience, they have a trauma, they say, like, they're really upset about something. You ask them, I'm curious, what are you making that mean? Or I can see that you're really angry or frustrated or whatever. That tell me, how do you feel? Are you angry? And then they let them express whatever they say. You just acknowledge it, right? Doesn't mean agreement.
Yeah.
Then you say, I'm curious, what are you making that mean? Like, tell me, what are you making that mean? Because oftentimes it's the meaning that creates the attachment. So let me say this a different way. All fear is just a form of an attachment. We wouldn't have fear if we haven't attached a meaning to it.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes complete sense.
Yeah. So we have to understand, what's the attachment? What's the meaning? What are the meaning that you're giving that? That person said this to me. What are you making that mean?
Yes.
Right? Once we get the meaning, right? So we want to outline that. Is that we're going to process this emotion. Now we want to sort from what's the truth about what I'm making it mean and what's the lie. What's the conception about it? Because remember, everything exists in an equal and opposite whole, right? So if there is a truth piece of it, there's also, if I'm attaching a meaning, there's something that is a lie or a misconception or a misunderstanding for that to be there.
Yes.
Does that make sense? Or I would have no attachment.
Yes.
Right?
Because it would be nothing.
It would be neutral.
Yeah.
It would be like, she said blah, blah, blah. And I'm like,
okay.
So, okay. Right? So without an attachment, there is no, there's no emotional reaction. Well, here's the coolest thing. And I wish somebody would have told me this a long time ago, is that the coolest thing is, oftentimes people will come to me and they're like, because I'm known as a human potential expert, and people are like, well, I want to live my full potential, or I just want to access my power. But where power and potential really is in that, what we just did, in looking at what the meaning is, separating the truth from the lie, because the access to power or the access to potential lies in the space between that choice of whether you react or respond.
Yes.
Whether you have an action of or a reaction. Can you see the space of it, that choice of let me wait a minute, let me look at this and let me get back with you. You know what I mean? When you feel something is off internally, rather than thinking it's something that you have to fix externally.
Yes.
Being able to take a few moments or tell them you're going to get back to them and sort out your emotions, process that, such that you can then come from power and really answer it the way that you want to answer it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it completely makes sense. It completely makes sense. So in our business, when we are kind of making these, I mean, it feels like there's kind of basically a fork in the road.
Yes.
And we need that space to choose which direction we go in.
Yes, absolutely. Because what happens is when we heal the trauma, then you can see what happens is people often say to me, how I got the name, The Awakened Entrepreneur, is people go, oh my God, I feel so awake. And this is exactly what happens to you, is once you heal the trauma, what happens is, where before you were in the movie having the trauma drama with people.
Yes.
Now you come outside of the movie and you're like, I see everything over there. Like you're not in the movie anymore. So that's why I call it trauma drama. Like we don't have trauma drama anymore. Like you don't get into the drama of it because you're not emotionally triggered.
Yes.
So now all of a sudden you see things, and now that choice of like what to do it can be kind of funny. Like it's comical.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
can see yourself going, oh, that's so funny. In the past, I would have
done
this. I would have gone left, and now I'm going right. And then
Yeah.
like that's where that power is. That exactly what you're pointing at. And when you can do that over and over again, it becomes natural. By the way, it becomes a natural. Like I don't have to think to do that
Yes.
anymore. It becomes a natural impulse and intuition. But what happens is when we had our original trauma, we stopped trusting ourselves.
Yes.
So when we heal this and we come back to ourselves, what happens is we build back the trust that we lost so long ago. So then what happens is when inside of this, our intuition comes back, right? Because we what happened in that trauma and that day, we went into our heads to figure this all out.
Yes.
And have you noticed, like, that's why everybody always says the same thing. I'm so overwhelmed. I'm like, they're overthinking everything. I'm like, because the trauma is where we go to our head to try, because we make a decision that day and we go, I have to figure this out. Right?
Yeah.
Because before that trauma, we never went in our heads to try to figure out. We felt for everything. And so we were naturally using our intuition and our natural way of being to, have everything that we want in our lives. So it's that process of going into the head. And unfortunately, society rewards that in the sense, right? Like, you've got to they think it's all where the power is all in your head, right? It's all about being smart. When, my son, I'm self-made, right? Like there's no family that has money. I don't have a college education. My kids have all gone to college because my son went to, he got a business degree, and I remember him a master's. I remember him used to coming to me for advice, and I would tell him something completely different than what he was being taught.
Yeah.
And he says, but that's not what they're telling me. And I said, well, here's what you need to test this for yourself. But you want to question the fact that, have they created millions of dollars?
Yes.
You want to really, and I'm not discrediting the person, in any way, because that's not a judgment of what they're teaching. But I said to him, but there's a very big difference between what is conceptual of what you should do and what there really is for you practically to do.
Yes.
Right. And until you understand it on a practical level, I want you to consider you don't have real knowledge. That's what I said to him, because knowledge is not real power. It's implemented knowledge, or the experiences of that knowledge that is true knowledge, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So kind of looping back, how do we find the original trauma? How do we work out what that is?
Absolutely. And for all of your listeners, I'm going to give you like a free book. It would be easier if you just, because we
can include the link in the show notes and things.
Yeah, because in the book, it literally walks you through it inside of like how to like get this for yourselves. But so they can go back and use it. They can go to the Mia Meant for More book.com.
Lovely. Well, I'll include that link so that everyone can just
put it
click
in
on
the
it.
link. Yeah, and then use a password, because otherwise everywhere else it's sold. But if they just need a password. It's all one word, free book, but capital F.
Okay, so lovely.
Free book, one word.
Great.
Capital F. So now I'm going to tell you how to do it, and then they can go back and
reference it,
because it will go and remind them of all these little steps.
Perfect.
But here's basically how you want to do it. So couple things. The first thing is you're going to want to close your eyes, because when your eyes are open, your mind wants to look for the memory inside of your conscious mind, but it's not in your conscious mind. It's in your subconscious mind, right?
Ah.
Because it's in your feeling mind, because prior to the age of 7, you didn't have a conscious mind. You only had a subconscious mind. So it's going to be in your body. It's going to be in your feelings. So you're going to feel for the answers that I'm going to ask you these questions. You're going to feel for it, because that's how you're going to access it. So that's the first thing that I want to prerequisite is to finding it. You're going to feel for it and close your eyes. The second thing is that when you get here's what it's going to do. So let me show you a little bit as it, and then we'll make sure you guys get it. But as I lead you back, so inside of you just feeling for it, you're going to go back and you're going to feel for your birth, and you're going to feel for being one, and you're going to feel. And most oftentimes people will say, I don't feel anything. Good, because that means the trauma hasn't happened yet. Okay? And most oftentimes we misunderstand that if I don't feel anything at birth or one, it's like but
I'm not doing it right, or
they think I'm not doing it right. But the truth is because you haven't had a trauma, because the trauma, you won't have a feeling of it until it happened. So if you just want to keep going, right? Instead of then go to 2, go to 3, and all of a sudden you will feel like a feeling first, and the feeling will come quick, and then it'll shoot an image into your mind. My second request inside of this is, whatever the image is, don't judge it. Okay? Because you have been through a lot worse since you were 2. Yeah. And so what then happens to my entrepreneurs is, the reason they can't find it is because they go, oh, that's ridiculous. That can't be it. That's so small. It could be, you see, like my guy who was like, I don't think I have a trauma, and it happened at 4, but he thought that was ridiculous and insignificant. So he didn't associate it to his trauma.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Yeah. Now, it can be that you won't even remember all, it's very natural not to have a whole scenario. Like, what I mean by that is, a lot of the traumas I find, there will be just a glimpse of an image, and that's all I need. Because in the book, you will see the questions I'm gonna have you ask yourself is, when that happened, that image, just ask yourself, what did you make it mean about you? Because as children, being in the subconscious mind, we don't have a conscious mind. When this happened, we didn't have a conscious mind. So we didn't say, oh, mom or dad is just having a bad day today.
Okay, yeah.
That would be logical. No. Subconsciously, what we do is go, oh, it's all my fault. I must have done this. There's something wrong with me, right? Right? This is where I ask yourself the questions, what did you make it mean about you? And then you're going to drop all that down. And then you're going to ask yourself, what did you make it mean about other people? Because in that moment of, you're making distinctions between, wow, this happened to me. This is my fault. There's something wrong with me. I must not be good enough. I must not be smart. I must not be whatever those is. And then you made decisions about, oh, other people must be this. Like, I've made the decision, I can't trust others. It's definitely not my father. And I also made decisions of before that experience, I had never had an experience of what force was. So I also associated other people will use their power on you. Yeah. Right? So you just want to kind of dump out what it is that you made about yourself, others. And then the last thing is, before that experience, the world looked one way to you. But after that experience, the world became what? Yeah. And so it's the culmination of those 3 decisions that I found that every human being has made. And it doesn't matter. They'll usually say, but I was only 2. Yes, but you didn't have a logical mind. So you made these very quickly from a feeling place. Yes. I even had one who it happened in the birth. And now that's very young. I don't get a lot of those. But hers was, she remembers making these decisions because she was so comfortable before she was born. She remembers in the birth of it
Wow.
making the decisions like, I'm not ready. This is forcing I did, like, which is fascinating. I
Wow.
only had one of those, but
Mm.
I like to say that because I did have also a couple others that were like 15 months old. Like, I remember this guy saying to me, all he remembered was his one from the first original trauma was somebody, like an arm that grabbed him and yanked him. And when we went into that, that's when it uncovered all of his trauma. But he was like 15 months old.
Wow.
So it doesn't, I just trust, if you just trust the feeling place, it will get revealed to you. But that, whatever the decisions you made about yourself, others in the world, that becomes the pattern that we run 24/7. Like how I test it to make sure like we have the original one. I'll ask them every single time. I'll say, how often do you run that pattern, that feeling place, every day? And they're like, all day long. I'm like, yep, this is it. This is the one that we have to heal, because that's why it's excessive and it's pervasive, and that's why it's everywhere in our lives, right?
Wow.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And it's absolutely incredible to think that that something that could happen so young and feels so insignificant actually has a 24/7 impact on our lives, in everything, all our relationships, all our choices,
Everything,
our business, every single thing. It's incredible.
It literally changed the trajectory of our life.
Wow.
And then that trajectory, it's kind of like once you're cooked, you're baked or whatever, like that pattern will keep firing. Because, and now why? So like, this is why, because I get a lot of people who say, they'll have these, we make up all kinds of things when we don't understand why things keep happening to us, right? I used to make up all kinds of stories, like, like the universe is out to get me. I hear that one a lot. Or, that I'm just not, it just meant a lot. I get a lot of like, it mustn't be meant to be. And it's like, no, let me help you understand a couple things, right? So along with the universal law of polarity, there is a really powerful universal law of cause and effect.
Yes.
Right? So the cause and effect is when you understand that every cause has an effect, or if you think of it as a ripple, or if you think of it as a tree, when the tree, the effects of the tree is the leaves and the branches, but the cause is coming from the root. Right? So if you think of it in terms of that, then it's like everything that is happening, the results that are happening in your life are having a direct or an effect to the underlying root cause about how you feel about yourself. So if you understand that everything is happening inside out, not outside in, we can start to see it's not that something is happening to you. It's just that as you're not aware of how powerful you really are, and you are emotionally always feeling like not enough, you invariably keep having experiences that prove yourself right, even when you're wrong.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. I think we can all relate to that. Like, oh, look, see, there we go. Told you.
Yes. Do you see? And
again.
And then the reason we all stay stuck for so long is because since the law of cause and effect, like, or let me say it another way, the universe doesn't know no. So whatever you are feeling, it just says yes to. So whatever you're putting out there, you just get more of. That's why when we resist, whatever we resist persists, or when it goes really good, it goes great, right? The better it gets, the better it gets. The reason those sayings exist is because that's all coming from the universal law of cause and effect. But when you understand that, so there's a couple components that have to, that's why I wrote the book, is that you have to understand first how you work as a human being. Like, where's the trauma coming from? Where's the pattern? Then you need to understand the universal laws of like how it all is working. You have free will.
Yes.
If you didn't have free will, like, think about this, like the reason why all of this exists is because it all exists because you have free will. And so the very essence of contrast, right? If there is, for every problem, there's a solution, for every solution, there creates a new problem, because a new stepping off point, which then will create a new contrast. So if you can, when you understand how you work, and when you understand how the universe or this time-space reality we live in really works, now you have real power, because you can start to have it work all for you.
Yes.
Instead of feeling like it's always happening to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's where we need to be as business owners and entrepreneurs, is actually feeling like we do have that power.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Somebody asked me recently, Mia, why is it only 2% of female entrepreneurs ever break $1 million? And I said to him, well, it's number one, it's their trauma, right? But the reason it's more like that for females rather than males is because the second reason is inside of that. So number one is trauma. The second reason is because as women and as nurturers, as in our society, where we're taught to be mothers and so forth, we don't learn to ever delegate.
Yes.
We are the biggest do-it-yourselfers, right? So where men aren't taught from a very young age to take care of everybody else.
Yes.
That doesn't mean they don't do it financially, but I'm saying as far as doing everything themselves, they're much better on average. I'm generalizing here, but on average, they're much better delegators.
Interesting.
And so what stops women is, that inside of their trauma, but then not learning to delegate, because they think they have to do it all themselves, because they've attached their value to what they do for others, rather than being really great at asking for what it is that you want support in, and being resourceful at getting, delegating. So I see that constantly. We have to learn to, because during that trauma, and you can all feel this, is like in that trauma that everyone has experienced, they didn't ask for what they wanted. You see where there's no voice.
No.
So part of us the reason there's not more millionaires as a whole, including men, because I coach men, is that they didn't think that they could have a voice.
Yeah.
So it's like giving back that power of being able to ask for what you want, right? And not feeling bad. Like I had to learn that. Like I was always taught never to ask for anything.
Yeah.
So I grew up poor. So my mom used to say, as a habit, like every time we went anywhere, to a friend's house, don't ask for anything.
Don't ask for anything.
Don't ask for anything. Go into a store, don't ask for anything.
I think many people hear that, don't they? I mean, that's really, you see it all the time, and you hear it all the time. People being told, don't worry, we're going shopping now. Don't ask for anything. That's really common.
It was so ingrained in me. I felt so awful asking for what I needed. I felt guilty. I had this huge guilt of like, and so until I cleaned all this up, but I had this huge guilt of like, I can't ask people to do this. I can't ask that person to do that. I can't do, until I realized, no, you really can. You can just really ask and not attach a meaning to what their response is.
Yeah.
And then be able to, work with whatever shows up and like come to an agreements and so forth, and get agreements on things. But yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Mia, this has been incredibly fascinating. I am sure that our listeners will also think so. I certainly do. And I am absolutely going to do that work as well, to find what my original trauma is too.
Awesome.
I think it's going to be incredible. So we will link to the book in the show notes. We'll put that password in there as well, so that everyone has that. How can people connect with you? How can they find out more about you?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely get the free book. I would say,
of course.
Sure, like get the free book, download it, read it. Tell me what you uncover. I love hearing. I get people all over the world going, oh my gosh, your book's changed my life. So I love to hear. It is in story format. Let me just tell you this, because there are a few people who are like, you told it in a story. And the reason I tell it in a story, so let me explain this. It is my own story. I changed her name. People miss this in the very beginning, but I say it in the beginning. So I'm telling this story, and I call my younger self Sue, to not confuse the reader. Sue is having conversations with Mia. So it's still my younger self, but what I'm doing, and the reason I told it in story format, is so that you all can ask what Mia asks her, your own, ask it to yourself. It's told that way. So it's like someone said it best when she said, oh my God, this book changed my life. It was like having a one-on-one conversation with you, like to be able to uncover everything in my life. That's the reason I told it in story format. Let me tell you, it was very difficult.
I bet it was.
Story. Like people, like it was like, oh my gosh, it would have been easier just to tell you guys
to teach.
Yes, but the reason why we can't find it is because we like stories is like when we tell it in a story and ask questions, that's how you're going to uncover it. Where if I just had said it through it, it really wouldn't have resonated with as many people because it was the way that I did it. And I get that all the time. People are like, I've heard different things like this over the years from different pieces. I've never heard it all put together in the way that you put it together. And definitely never understood it from an original trauma because, or the ego inception, right? Which is very new to people. But it's the way that I put it all together. But definitely I would say read the book. You can always reach out to me. I answer every email myself. So it's Mia at Mia Hewett. And Hewett is spelled HEWETT.com.
Lovely.
So they can always reach out. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again, Mia. It has been an incredible conversation. I've loved every minute. So I appreciate your time. And thanks again for coming on Uncover Wealth Radio.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.